Commander Thrakvol stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Pride, watching the blue-green planet rotate slowly beneath him, his forearms crossed over his massive chest as he studied the tactical displays. Earth, such a small, insignificant world in the grand scheme of the Galactic Empire. Yet here he was, leading the largest invasion fleet assembled in 3 centuries. "Sir," his tactical officer chirped through mandibles that clicked nervously. "The Council's final message just arrived. They're reminding us about..." The warning. Thrakvol's 6 eyes narrowed. He knew exactly what warning they meant. Every species in the galaxy had heard it. The universe's #1 rule: never fight the human sniper. It was carved into the walls of the Galactic Council chambers. It was taught in military academies across 1,000 worlds. It was whispered in the darkest corners of space stations and sung in the war chants of mercenary companies. But Thrakvol had conquered 63 worlds. He had crushed the mechanoid rebellion. He had brought the proud crystalline entities to their knees. What was one human with a projectile weapon compared to his achievements? "Ignore it," he growled, his voice resonating through the bridge. "Humans are primitive. They still use chemical propulsion and metal slugs. Our shields can withstand antimatter bombs. What harm could their ancient weapons possibly do?" The tactical officer wanted to protest, but he knew better. When Commander Thrakvol made a decision, questioning it meant a quick trip out the airlock. Down on Earth, in a bunker hidden beneath tons of reinforced concrete and steel, General Harrison received the news with a grim expression. The alien armada had been detected 3 days ago. Humanity had tried diplomacy. They had sent warnings. They had even shared the historical records of what happened the last 17 times alien forces had ignored the rule. "They're really going to do it, aren't they?" Lieutenant Chen asked, her fingers dancing over the holographic displays. Harrison nodded slowly. "Prepare Protocol 7. Wake him up." Deep in the mountains of Montana, in a facility that didn't exist on any map, a single light flickered on in a cryogenic chamber. The pod's seal broke with a soft hiss, and frost-covered glass lifted away. Inside, a man sat up slowly, his movements precise, despite having been frozen for 50 years. Marcus Ghost Williams looked exactly as he had the day he'd volunteered for extended stasis. Lean, unremarkable, with gray eyes that seemed to see through everything they looked at. He was humanity's ultimate deterrent, the reason behind the universe's most important rule. "How many this time?" he asked, his voice rough from decades of silence. The technician who had awakened him swallowed hard. 3,000 ships, sir. The Galactic Empire's main invasion fleet." Marcus nodded once. "Send me the files. All of them." For the next 6 hours, Marcus studied. He absorbed every piece of intelligence humanity had gathered on the Galactic Empire. Ship specifications, crew complements, shield frequencies, armor compositions, command structures, and most importantly, psychological profiles of their leaders. His enhanced neural implants processed the information at superhuman speeds. But Marcus took his time. He had learned long ago that patience was a sniper's greatest weapon. The Galactic Empire's first mistake was assuming human weapons were primitive. Yes, humans still used projectile weapons. But not because they couldn't develop energy weapons. They used them because they had perfected them to an art form that the galaxy had never seen. The rifle Marcus assembled in his workshop was a masterpiece of human engineering. Its barrel was forged from metals, harvested from asteroids, treated with processes that made them harder than diamond. The ammunition wasn't simple metal slugs, but programmable matter rounds that could adjust their properties mid-flight. The scope didn't just magnify, it bent space-time itself, allowing him to see through obstacles and across impossible distances. But the weapon was only a tool. The real weapon was Marcus himself. The invasion began at dawn, Earth time. Thousands of dropships descended through the atmosphere, their shields glowing as they pushed through the air. Fighter craft swarmed like angry wasps, strafing defensive positions. The alien ground forces were efficient, disciplined, and overwhelmingly superior in numbers and technology. They expected resistance. They expected nuclear weapons, cyber attacks, guerrilla warfare. What they didn't expect was for their commanding officers to start dying. It started with Captain Vector, commanding the 7th Landing Division. He was inspecting the perimeter of their forward base when his head simply ceased to exist. No sound of gunfire, no visible projectile, no warning. One moment he was giving orders, the next his body was falling to the ground. His second-in-command barely had time to call for medics before she too was gone. Then the base's tactical coordinator. Then the chief engineer. Panic began to spread through the ranks. Energy shields that could stop plasma cannons offered no protection. Being inside armored vehicles made no difference. Distance seemed irrelevant. One soldier reported seeing an officer die while standing in a bunker buried under 30 meters of rock. On the Dominion's Pride, Commander Thrakvol watched the casualty reports with growing unease. In the first hour of the invasion, they had lost more officers than in the entire Crystalline campaign, and it was always the same pattern. Single shots, perfect accuracy, no trace of the shooter. "Find him," Thrakvol roared. "Deploy every scanner, every satellite, every reconnaissance unit. One human cannot hide from the entire Galactic Empire." Armor. They tried. Oh, how they tried. Orbital bombardments turned entire mountain ranges to glass. Quantum scanners swept across continents. Psychic trackers from 3 different species attempted to locate the source of the attacks. They found nothing, because Marcus wasn't where they expected him to be. The beauty of his weapon system was that it didn't require line of sight in any conventional sense. Each shot he fired wasn't traveling through normal space. The rounds entered miniature wormholes, created by technology reverse-engineered from captured alien drives, and emerged at their destination. He could be anywhere on Earth, or even off it, and still reach his targets. But Marcus preferred to stay mobile. A network of underground tunnels, some natural, some carved by human machines over decades, allowed him to move undetected. He would fire 3 shots from one location, then travel 50 miles before firing again. To the aliens' sensors, it must have seemed like an army of invisible snipers. The psychological effect was devastating. Alien soldiers refused to accept promotions. Officers started wearing the uniforms of lower ranks. Command structures broke down as no one wanted to give orders that might mark them as important enough to target. And Marcus was just getting started. He had studied the Galactic Empire's forces carefully. He knew their protocols, their chain of command, their backup procedures. When they tried to promote from within, he was ready. When they brought in reinforcements, he knew which shuttle carried the new commanders. When they tried to operate through encrypted communications without visible leadership, he targeted the communication officers. By the 3rd day of the invasion, the mighty Galactic Empire's ground forces were in chaos. Leaderless units wandered aimlessly. Supply lines broke down without logistics officers to maintain them. Defensive positions were abandoned as soldiers fled rather than wait to see who among them might be important enough to draw the sniper's attention. Commander Thrakvol watched his perfect invasion turn into a disaster. He had lost more officers in 3 days than most campaigns lost in 3 years. The ground forces had taken less than 5% of their objectives. Worse, other species were watching. The entire galaxy was witnessing the Galactic Empire being brought to its knees by a single human. "Perhaps," his tactical officer suggested carefully, "we should consider the Council's original advice." Thrakvol's 6 eyes turned to the officer, burning with rage and something else: fear. Because deep down, he was beginning to understand why the rule existed. It wasn't about the technology. It wasn't about the tactics. It was about something fundamental in human nature, something that made them terrifyingly effective at this particular form of warfare. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters. They could track prey for days, wearing it down through patience and determination. They had eyes designed for precision, hands steady enough for microsurgery, and minds capable of calculating complex trajectories instinctively. When they turned these abilities to warfare, when they combined them with technology and the will to defend their home, they became something the galaxy had no answer for. Marcus paused in his latest firing position, checking his ammunition count. He had enough rounds for another 2 weeks of continuous operations. The invasion force was already showing signs of collapse, but he wouldn't stop until they were gone. This was the duty he had accepted, the reason he had volunteered to spend decades in stasis. He was the guardian at the gate, the reminder of why the universe's #1 rule existed. And he would keep reminding them until they learned. A new alert flashed on his tactical display. Reinforcements were arriving from 3 different Empire worlds. Marcus smiled grimly and began plotting new firing solutions. They still hadn't learned. The universe had one rule about fighting human snipers. The Galactic Empire had chosen to ignore it. Now they would pay the price. One perfectly placed shot at a time. The conference room aboard the Dominion's Pride had never hosted such a gathering. Representatives from every major species in the Galactic Empire sat around the massive table, their forms shimmering through holographic projections. The crystalline entities chimed their displeasure. The void dancers rippled with anxiety. Even the ancient precursors had sent an observer, breaking their 1,000-year silence. Commander Thrakvol stood at the head of the table, his pride warring with the reality of his situation. In 1 week, he had lost 843 officers. The number was precise because each death was burned into his memory. Each impossible shot that defied physics, shields, and logic. "This is unacceptable," buzzed the Hive Queen of Proxima. "The Empire's reputation bleeds with every death. 16 colonies are reconsidering their tribute payments. The Rebel Alliance grows bold. All because of one human? Not just any human," the precursor's voice echoed like distant thunder. "We warned you. We all warned you. The rule exists because we learned its truth through blood and failure." The hologram of Elder Sis's talk of the mechanoids flickered as he spoke. "My people fought the humans 300 cycles ago. We thought our mechanical bodies made us immune to their snipers. We were wrong. They developed rounds that corrupted our core programming mid-flight. We lost 60% of our command structure before we retreated. The Shadowkin tried to ambush human colonies in the Veil Nebula," another voice added. "We can phase through dimensions, become invisible to all known sensors. The human sniper killed our pack leaders while they were phased. We still don't understand how." Story after story filled the room. Each species had their own encounter with human snipers. Each had learned the rule through devastating losses. And now the Galactic Empire, in its arrogance, was learning the same lesson. On Earth, Marcus studied the new intelligence reports. The reinforcements were interesting. 3 different fleets from 3 different species, each with their own defensive strategies. The armored collective had arrived with ships covered in layers of overlapping shields. The Psychic Dominion brought warriors who could see moments into the future. The Quantum Syndicate's forces existed in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. They were learning, adapting. Good. It would make the lesson more memorable. Marcus activated a secure communication channel. Around the world, other facilities stirred to life. The Galactic Empire had made another crucial mistake. They assumed there was only one sniper. They didn't realize that Marcus was simply the first, the prototype, the proof of concept. Earth had been preparing for this day for over a century. "Ghost to all stations," Marcus spoke into his encrypted communicator. "Initialize Prometheus Protocol. Authorization. Remember reach." In hidden bases from Alaska to New Zealand, cryogenic pods opened. 24 men and women, each trained to Marcus's exacting standards, each equipped with their own variant of the impossible rifle, began their preparations. They were the Ghosts, Earth's ultimate insurance policy. Sarah, Wraith Chen, preferred ammunition that could phase through multiple dimensions before solidifying inside her target. James Phantom Rodriguez had perfected shots that arrived before they were fired, creating paradoxes that drove alien physicists mad. Elena, Spectre Volkov, specialized in rounds that targeted specific genetic markers, able to identify and eliminate entire command bloodlines. The Galactic Empire's reinforcements lasted exactly 17 hours. The armored collective's overlapping shields meant nothing when bullets materialized inside them. The Psychic Dominion discovered that seeing the future was useless when the shot had technically already happened in the past. The Quantum Syndicate found that existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously just meant dying in all of them at once. But the ghosts revealed something else about human nature that terrified the aliens even more. They didn't just kill. They communicated. After each shot, a small message would appear, burned into nearby surfaces, or displayed on screens. You were warned. The rule exists for a reason. Leave now. This ends when you retreat. It was psychological warfare refined to an art form. The aliens weren't just dying, they were being educated. Admiral Kreetok of the Psychic Dominion experienced it firsthand. She was in her meditation chamber, surrounded by the strongest psychic shields her species could generate, when she felt the touch of alien thought. Not aggressive, not hostile, just disappointed. Like a teacher sadly watching a student repeat a mistake. Then the bullet arrived. It didn't pierce her shields. It simply existed inside them, as if it had always been there. Kreetok had exactly 3 seconds to contemplate the impossibility before her consciousness scattered to the cosmic winds. The breaking point came when the ghosts demonstrated they could do more than kill individuals. A coordinated strike took out every navigation officer in the invasion fleet within a span of 30 seconds. 3,000 ships, suddenly unable to calculate jump coordinates, trapped in Earth's system until they could train replacements. If they could train replacements, no one wanted the job. Commander Thrakvul found himself alone on the bridge of his flagship. His entire command staff had either been killed or had fled to lower decks, desperately trying to appear unimportant. He stood at his station, his 4 hands gripping the railing, knowing that at any moment he could join the growing list of casualties. But the shot didn't come. Not for him. And somehow, that was worse. The human snipers, he corrected himself, were leaving him alive deliberately. They wanted him to watch his perfect invasion crumble. They wanted him to report back to the Galactic Council. They wanted him to carry the message. On Earth, the ghosts had gathered in a secure facility. Their work was precise, measured, but the strain showed. Each shot required intense concentration, perfect timing, and the kind of mental fortitude that few possessed. They were winning, but victory came at a cost. Status report, Marcus called out, his voice steady despite the exhaustion in his eyes. Fleet cohesion at 12% and falling, Sarah reported. They're pulling back from all ground positions. Intercepted communications suggest several ships are preparing for unauthorized retreats, James added. Their unity is shattered. Elena looked up from her scope, a grim smile on her face. The crystalline entities are already drafting a formal withdrawal request. They're calling this an unacceptable military paradigm. Marcus nodded. The plan was working, but they needed to be sure the lesson stuck. The universe's #1 rule existed for a reason, and that reason needed to be burned into the collective memory of every spacefaring species. Phase 3, he announced. Show them we could have ended this at any time. The ghosts moved to new positions, their weapons adjusting to new configurations. What happened next would be remembered in alien military academies for millennia. Every display screen on every ship in the invasion fleet activated simultaneously. The image was simple. A targeting reticle centered on each viewer's head. The message was clear. We can see you. All of you. Anywhere. Anytime. Then the displays showed something else. Technical readouts of the alien ships. Deck by deck. Room by room. Detailed personnel lists with names, ranks, and positions. Trajectory calculations for shots that could reach every single crew member. The humans weren't just saying they could kill everyone. They were proving it. But they didn't pull the triggers. That was the most terrifying part. Instead, a new message appeared. You have 48 hours to withdraw. Leave Earth system and never return. Spread the word. The rule exists for your protection, not ours. The panic was instantaneous and absolute. Ships collided as they tried to retreat. Escape pods launched in every direction. The mighty Galactic Empire's invasion force, which had conquered worlds and crushed civilizations, fled like frightened animals before a predator they couldn't see, couldn't understand, and couldn't fight. Commander Thrakvol watched his empire's greatest military force dissolve into chaos. His career was over, his reputation was destroyed, but he was alive, and he understood that his survival was deliberate. He was meant to return, to report, to ensure that the rule was never challenged again. As his flagship prepared for an emergency jump, Thrakvol received one final transmission. It was from Earth's General Harrison, the first direct communication from human leadership since the invasion began. "Commander," Harrison's weathered face appeared on the screen. "You came here with 3,000 ships and dreams of conquest. You'll leave with a fraction of that and a story. Make sure it's told correctly. The universe has one rule about fighting human snipers. We didn't make the rule. We are the rule." The transmission ended, and Thrakvol gave the order to retreat. As the stars stretched into lines and his ship entered jump space, he made a vow. He would return to the Galactic Council. He would stand before the assembled representatives of 1,000 worlds, and he would make sure they understood. The rule wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't a guideline. It was a fundamental law of survival in a universe where humans had turned the art of killing from a distance into something approaching the divine. Back on Earth, the ghosts began their return to stasis. Their job was done. For now, the invasion was repelled, the lesson was taught, and the rule was reinforced. They had never needed to demonstrate their full capabilities. The Galactic Empire never learned about the orbital platforms that could target ships in hyperspace, or the rounds that could retroactively prevent someone from being born, or the true extent of humanity's sniper network. Those secrets would remain hidden, waiting for the next species foolish enough to test the universe's most important rule. Marcus was the last to enter stasis, taking one final look at the tactical displays showing the retreating alien forces. "Sleep well, Ghost," General Harrison said as the pod sealed. "With luck, we won't need to wake you for another century." Marcus smiled as the cold embraced him. The universe had one rule about human snipers. Today, that rule had been written in the blood and terror of the Galactic Empire. Tomorrow, it would echo through the stars as a warning: never fight the human sniper, because the human sniper had already won before the fight began. The Grand Assembly of the Galactic Council had never been so silent. 10,000 representatives from every known civilization sat in tiered rows that stretched up into the misty heights of the ancient chamber. At the center, Commander Thrakvol stood alone, his once proud bearing diminished but not broken. He had insisted on delivering his report in person, against all protocol. 3,000 ships, he began, his voice carrying through the perfect acoustics of the chamber. 843 officers of command, rank or higher. 0 tactical objectives achieved. Total withdrawal in 8 standard days. The numbers hung in the air like an accusation. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. They had voted to support the invasion, convinced that the Empire's might could overcome one small planet's defenders. "Tell them how," the precursor demanded, its ancient voice cutting through the silence. "Tell them exactly how it happened." Thrakvol activated the holographic projector. The assembly watched in growing horror as he showed them the impossible shots, the untraceable bullets, the systematic destruction of their command structure. He showed them officers dying inside bunkers, behind shields, in situations that should have been absolutely secure. "We never saw them," he continued. "Not once. Our best sensors, our psychic trackers, our quantum scanners, all useless. They killed who they wanted, when they wanted, from wherever they wanted." The Shadowkin ambassador rose, her form flickering between dimensions. "This matches our records from the Veil Nebula incident. Identical patterns. It seems humans have only grown more dangerous with time." "More dangerous?" laughed the mechanoid representative, a harsh electronic sound. "They showed mercy. Commander Thrakvol stands before us because they allowed it. They could have eliminated every soul in that fleet, but they chose to educate rather than exterminate." That thought silenced the assembly again. The humans could have committed xenocide. Instead, they had delivered a lesson. The High Arbiter of the Council, a being so old its species had been forgotten, spoke for the first time in 50 years. The rule exists. The rule has been tested. The rule has been proven. Let it be carved deeper into our laws. Let it be taught with greater emphasis. Let none say they were not warned. The vote was unanimous. The universe's #1 rule would be elevated from a strong recommendation to an inviolate law. Any species attempting to engage human snipers would forfeit all council protection and trade rights. It was official. Fighting human snipers was now legally classified as an act of suicide. On Earth, the victory was celebrated quietly. There were no parades, no public announcements. Most humans didn't even know how close they had come to full-scale invasion. That was by design. The ghosts worked best when they were myth, legend, a whispered threat among the stars. General Harrison stood in the hidden facility, looking at the sealed stasis pods. 25 of humanity's finest. Sleeping, until needed. He turned to his aide, Lieutenant Chen, who had been promoted after her excellent work during the crisis. "Do you think they learned?" she asked. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. "For a generation. Maybe 2. Then, some young species will rise, full of pride and power. They'll look at the rule and think it's superstition, exaggeration, and will wake the ghosts again. Why don't we just tell them everything? Show them what we're really capable of?" The general smiled grimly. "Because fear of the unknown is more powerful than fear of the known. They think our snipers are terrifying? They have no idea about the rest of our deterrent programs. The Ghost Initiative is just one layer of Earth's defense." Chen nodded, understanding. There were rumors about other programs. The temporal shields that could retroactively prevent an invasion from starting. The probability manipulators who could ensure every enemy decision led to disaster. The mind weavers who could convince entire species that attacking Earth had been their worst nightmare rather than reality. Humanity had learned, in their violent history, that the best defense was to be too dangerous to attack. And when it came to warfare at a distance, they had no equal. In the depths of space, aboard merchant vessels and military cruisers, in bars on space stations and academies on distant worlds, the story spread. It grew with each telling, but the core remained true. The Galactic Empire, the greatest military force in known space, had been brought to its knees by human snipers they never even saw. New verses were added to old songs. Children played games where everyone wanted to be the human sniper. Invisible and invincible. Military tacticians wrote papers on the impossibility of countering an enemy that could kill from anywhere, at any time, without warning. The crystalline entities commissioned an opera about the invasion, a haunting piece where the percussion was timed to match the rhythm of officers dying. The void dancers created interpretive movements that captured the paranoia of never knowing when death would come. Even the warrior cultures that prized honorable combat admitted there was something terrifying about an enemy that turned warfare into an equation where they always won. But perhaps the most interesting development came from an unexpected source. The Galactic Empire's Science Division, humiliated by their failure to counter human sniper technology, began a new project. Not to fight humans, but to understand them. Dr. Velnash, a neural specialist from the inner worlds, published a paper that became required reading in military academies. She argued that humans hadn't developed sniper technology because they were violent, but because they were, paradoxically, peaceful. "Consider," she wrote, "a species that developed on a world with no natural armor, no claws, no venomous bite. They survived through intelligence and tool use. When threatened, their instinct isn't to charge but to solve the problem from a safe distance. Their sniper technology is the ultimate expression of this survival strategy. Conflict resolution with minimal risk to themselves." She went on to explain how human neurology was uniquely suited for long-range precision. Their binocular vision, their ability to calculate trajectories, their patience, their capacity for remaining still for extended periods, all evolutionary adaptations that made them natural snipers. They don't fight the human sniper because the human sniper is the culmination of millions of years of evolution combined with technological advancement. It's not just their weapons we can't counter. It's their fundamental nature. The paper was controversial, but it sparked a new understanding. Humans weren't monsters who killed from the shadows. They were survivors who had turned their limitations into their greatest strength. This understanding led to an unexpected consequence. Species began approaching Earth not for conflict, but for training. If humans were the ultimate snipers, could they teach others? The answer, surprisingly, was yes. The sniper exchange program started small. A few allied species sent their best marksmen to Earth for training. They learned not just technique, but philosophy. The human instructors emphasized that the power to kill from any distance came with the responsibility to use it wisely. Every shot changes the universe. Master Instructor Williams, no relation to Marcus, would tell his students. Make sure it changes it for the better. The program was a success. Graduates returned to their worlds with new skills, but, more importantly, new perspectives. They understood why the rule existed. It wasn't just about human capability. It was about the temptation to test that capability and the inevitable consequences. Years passed. The invasion became history, then legend. Commander Thrak-Val wrote his memoirs, a bestseller across the galaxy titled 8 Days of Education. He toured the speaking circuit, ensuring no one forgot the lesson. In the depths of the Galactic Council archives, scholars studied the recordings of the invasion. They analyzed each shot, each pattern, trying to understand the technology. They made little progress. Human representatives politely declined to share technical specifications, always with the same response. The rule exists for your protection. Some species grumbled about human secretiveness, but none challenged it. The memory of fleeing ships and dead officers was too fresh. The warning too clear. On Earth, life continued. Most humans remained unaware of their reputation among the stars. They went about their daily lives, working, loving, creating, never knowing that in the darkness between worlds, their species was whispered about, with awe and fear. The ghosts slept in their hidden bunkers, their weapons maintained by automated systems, waiting for the next time someone forgot the rule. Because someone always forgot. It was the nature of power to test itself against legends. In a secure facility, a new pod was being prepared. The sniper exchange program had identified a prodigy. A young woman whose test scores broke every record. She would be offered the chance to join the ghosts, to become part of the legend. General Harrison, now old and gray but still sharp, supervised her initial briefing. "Why me?" she asked, looking at the stasis pod that might be her home for centuries. "Because the universe has one rule about fighting human snipers," Harrison replied. "And that rule needs guardians. Not for our sake, but for theirs. Every species we don't have to fight is a victory. Every invasion we prevent by reputation alone saves countless lives." She nodded slowly, understanding the weight of what was being asked. To become myth. To become fear. To become the reason species chose peace over war. "When do I start?" As she began her training, across the galaxy, in a small tavern on a frontier world, a young alien soldier listened to an old veteran tell a story. It was about the time the Galactic Empire ignored the universe's most important rule. The soldier laughed, thinking it was exaggeration. The veteran's eyes grew distant. He had been there. He had seen friends die to invisible bullets. He had felt the terror of not knowing if he would be next. "Laugh if you want," the veteran said quietly. "But remember the rule. Never fight the human sniper. Because the human sniper isn't just one person. It's not just their technology. It's what happens when a species turns survival into science, distance into advantage, and patience into victory. It's not a rule," he continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "It's a promise, and humans always keep their promises." The young soldier stopped laughing. Something in the veteran's voice, the look in his eyes, made the story real. Another generation learned the rule, not through blood but through wisdom passed down, and in the depths of space, Earth turned on its axis, blue and green and peaceful. Its children slept, worked, and dreamed, unaware that among the stars, their world was known by another name, the planet of snipers, where distance meant nothing, where shields were illusion, where the only winning move was not to play. The universe had one rule, and as long as the ghosts slept in their bunkers, as long as the memory of the Empire's humiliation echoed through the stars, as long as species chose wisdom over pride, that rule would hold. Never fight the human sniper, because the fight was over before it began.